is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's flat. He throws. It is.
Hey everybody, thanks for once again tuning in to the Past Star Prime podcast. I'm your host, Scott Johnston, joined again by the other two hosts of the show, Mark Hoffman. How you doing, Marky?
I'm doing great.
And Bill Mahoney. Billy, where are you calling in from today?
Santa Clarita, California.
And Mark, where are you calling in from? Because you sound like you're halfway across the world.
Except, no, I would never. No one would go. We're doing these shows. What kind of person would take off and go around the world on a trip? None of us would do that.
Well, I'm in a town called Wellington, and that town happens to be in the country of New Zealand.
I should have known.
Wow. I looked it up. I think it's just under 7,000 miles away.
That's how far I wanted to get away from you guys.
Yep.
And it's not enough.
Really nice.
You tracked me down.
And Zoom still finds you.
That's the scary thing.
Put another shrimp on the Barbie.
That's Australian, man. Don't confuse your Australians with New Zealand, your Kiwis, man.
They do not like that.
No.
Hey, let's talk a little Sports Illustrated from November 25th, 1974. That's right, the last issue of the month. And then we are on to December. Good Lord. These years just fly by, don't they?
Oh, every day flies by.
Right. Ken Dryden, the Hall of Fame goaltender, is on the cover. And while we won't be talking with Ken, thanks to Billy, we will be talking with someone who Ken worked in the broadcast booth with. Maybe, I was trying to think of this, maybe the most famous hockey player ever to not play in the NHL. That has to be, right? Can we think of anyone else?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. No.
Team captain and gold medalist of the Miracle on Ice Team USA squad, Mike Eruzione. I'll bet you the people in New Zealand even know who he is, Mark.
I don't know. They just know rugby, the All Blacks. That's the rugby team here. That's the big sport here in New Zealand. Great
guy. Should be a ton of fun. The Miracle on Ice team voted the single best sporting moment of the 20th century. So I was thinking, you guys have anything that compares on that level or even on a level that's personal?
Well, I got, everyone remembers Doug Flutie's Hail Mary, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And Flutie was one of those guys that was pretty much universally beloved, you know?
Yeah.
Not too many people didn't like Doug Flutie.
And it was, I'm trying to remember, 1984, and I believe it was Thanksgiving weekend in 84.
Yeah.
And I remember I was with my friend Mitch, and we were at Islands. You remember Islands?
Yeah.
The
restaurant? Yeah, still around. Love those restaurants.
Loved Islands. Anyway, they had the game on there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching the Hail Mary at the end of the game. We were about to leave the restaurant, and then I'm like, now let's just watch this last play. And I watched the Hail Mary and said, oh, my God.
Yeah. Gerald Phelan.
To beat Miami.
Guy who caught the ball. Wonderful.
Right. All the Miami players just jumped in front and let him catch it behind him.
It's hard to find one that's going to compare to the Miracle on Ice team because that was for the country versus this was just, if you're a college football fan, I mean, like my wife wouldn't know who Doug Flutie is if, ever. I was thinking maybe more like maybe a Mary Lou Retton, type, when she won the gold, that kind of was, but there's really nothing that I could think of that is comparable. Billy, you got one?
It's not comparable. I just remember watching it when 1992 when Christian Laettner hit the shot.
Over Kentucky 1992. Yes.
That's right.
It was so amazing, and just taking the ball. Everyone's thinking it's got to go to Grant Hill, and he turned around and made a shot. And he had been all over Kentucky that day. I think he stepped on a guy. It was just, to me, it was mind blowing.
I think that's actually a really good one because Duke is a team people hate or
nowadays,
love, one or the other. And that's about like when college basketball was just at apex. Yep. I mean, everybody
now that shot made everyone hate Duke, and they still do nowadays. Him and JJ Redick.
Right.
I just thought of something else though after you finish this part that would be Carrie Scruggs.
I was thinking that, Mark. I thought about that.
Where she hurt her ankle and she could barely walk. She's 46 years old now, which is really scary.
Oh my gosh.
You know, she came in studio and
Jim picked her up.
She's carrying her, you know, because she's hurt. And the real funny story was, so it was a Friday. She comes in studio. We have her in studio, do the whole thing. Then I meet my wife, and we're at the old Beverly Center, okay, which I never went to. And we're walking in the Beverly Center, and all of a sudden there's Carrie and her mom and two security guards with her walking right up to me and like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing here?"
Yeah,
that's cool, Mark. I didn't know that.
I can see why Miracle on Ice was number one. It's deserving of number one, and look forward to talking to Mike in a few minutes. Before we get to the scorecard, though, Mark, you got a book to tell us about that they wrote about in this week's issue?
Yeah, well, Mark Cram, and we had his son on, and Book Talk talks about Reuben Hurricane Carter, top-ranked middleweight contender who went to jail for murder, and he always claimed he was innocent. So in 1974, they actually decided to look back at the case to open it back up again because there was some conflicting evidence. But what's fascinating about this is that, and the book and the reopening of the case inspired Bob Dylan to make the song "Hurricane" that came out a year later. Wow. And then in I think it was '99 they did the movie with Denzel Washington about his life. Yep. But he didn't even get off. It wasn't until 1985 that he got released from jail. So here in 1974 they're talking about, hey, there might be some evidence. Maybe this guy doesn't deserve to be in jail. And he'd been, I think, arrested in 66 or 67. So he'd been in jail for a while, and it still would take another 11 years before he'd get out.
And was it found that he didn't do it?
Well, there was, like they say, a couple people recanted their testimony. There was, you know, and there are other people that say, oh, no, he's guilty.
Right.
But, you know, when there is a shadow of a doubt, you know, you have to, you know, let the person go.
Scorecard, Bill.
Okay, it's just about the University of Oregon. The school colors, as we all know, are emerald green and lemon yellow. Well, the athletic department decided, let's put out some bumper stickers. It'll implore to go big green. That's what it was. Go big green. Football team, though, went in a slump, lost 7 in a row and fell to 2-8. So a new bumper sticker appeared with a slightly different message. It's now go big lemon.
Well,
there you go.
They wouldn't have the problem today. They wouldn't have the problem they had back then. Because Oregon has 20,000 different uniforms.
I was just about to say that, Mark. They have so many choices. The school's colors aren't just emerald green and lemon yellow now. It's everything.
Sometimes they're in
I couldn't
black.
picture Oregon going 2-8 now.
Right. Sometimes they're black with yellow trim. Sometimes it's all white. Sometimes it's all gray. Sometimes it's never the same.
I've seen fluorescent green.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I like their original colors, that Dan Fouts, that green jerseys with the yellow pants and the yellow helmet and the cartoon duck on the helmet.
Yep.
I like the cartoon duck.
Mark, what do you got?
Well, the North American Soccer League announced the awarding of its 18th franchise, the Chicago String. So what's so fascinating about this is that the NASL has more franchises, this is hard to believe, than the NBA or the NHL at the time. Right. Only the NFL and Major League Baseball had more franchises at the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I read that. NBA had 17 at the time, and the NHL had 16. Both of those would go up when the ABA and the WHL folded, and some teams joined those respective leagues. But yeah, 18 in the NASL. Who knew, right? It would be 10 years.
That doesn't even sound right even nowadays, because the NBA and the NHL were actually growing and soccer was there. But man, that's crazy.
And the funny thing is the North American Soccer League folded in '84. So
Yeah.
too many franchises.
What about 13-year-old Larry J? Not sure if being bitten is a sport, but if it is, he's a pro's pro. This poor kid gets bit on the back of his left hand on August 29th by a black widow, rushed to the hospital. He's okay. 4 days later, September 2nd, steps on a rattlesnake, which bites him below the knee, spends 3 days in the hospital. Not quite done, old Larry J. October 6th, he bends down to pick up a chicken when another rattler gets him, this time on his left forearm. So that's Black Widow, rattlesnake, rattlesnake, all in about 5 weeks' time. He said he was sicker that time than the first snake bite, but that the spider bite was the worst of them all.
You know, if he says to me, "Hey, Mark, come follow me on this hike," I'm like, not a chance. You're going that way. I'm going this way.
But I mean, I knew a kid that got bitten by a spider. He turned into a superhero. So what the
Oh,
hell
that's
with
right, Peter Parker.
Yeah,
you know?
Worked out for him.
Come on, man.
Yes,
Worked out for
get
him.
Bit by the right spider.
Not as much for Larry J.
Yeah.
No, that's man. I hate spiders. So
Yeah. Mark, they said it.
Ken Avery of the Cincinnati Bengals, a linebacker, asked if anyone calls him a sissy because he studied ballet. He said if they did, I'd stomp him and do a pirouette on their heads.
That is a good way to not have people call you a sissy.
But wasn't there a lot of players that started? Didn't Jerry Rice do that later on because he said it helped him with his footwork?
All right, let's talk about our cover story, and that is Hall of Fame goaltender Ken Dryden. It's called Ken Dryden on Trial. Now, why is it called Ken Dryden on Trial? It's because in 1973, Ken Dryden won the Vezina Trophy, but he didn't like the contract Montreal offered him, so he went and clerked in a law firm for $134 a week. That's right. He wins the Vezina Trophy and then leaves the NHL because of a contract dispute and goes and practices or goes and works in a law firm for $135 a week. There is a guy who stood on principle.
Yeah.
He might have been too smart for that time. That's an incredibly smart man.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there were articles talking about how, he was like slumping beginning of the year. He gave up 8 goals to Buffalo,
Yeah. Yeah. He said after that, he said, "I'm very upset and very depressed. How could we play such an unbelievably stupid game? We made countless mistakes, but the definition of my job is that I'm supposed to cover up the mistakes that other people make. I didn't do that in this game, and I can't rationalize that my mistakes were the last mistakes in the series because such thinking is false. A goal is my responsibility, pure and simple." So you're right, Billy. He was smart. He realized that the team played horribly, but that he's the last guy on defense. And that game they lost, I think it was 8-6. So, you score 6 goals, you expect to win.
And you don't expect you would never get those type of comments nowadays, ever.
No.
You picture anybody in any sport going, I didn't mean to give up those 9 runs. It's my job. No, they wouldn't. They'd probably not talk to the media nowadays. And
our previous guest, Bernie Perrant, won the trophy that year for best goalie.
Yeah.
But Dryden came back, and I think the next 4 seasons either shared or won the award for best goalie. So,
what is it? I was reading this. He had let's see. It said he won 78 games pre-law clerk days, but when he came back, he won 280. I mean, he actually came back better. Most people that take a year off don't always come back with that type of success. But he also finished his career with just 57 losses, but he had 46 shutouts. So he almost had more shutouts than losses.
I mean, he had 57 losses in his entire career.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah. And that when we all try to get a guest, we go to the ends of the earth. He wrote a book. Ken Dryden wrote a book. So I called the publisher. They said, we haven't spoken to him in 40 years.
Oh my God.
Okay. Well, there goes that. So but he's also been a politician nowadays. I mean, he's done everything.
Yeah. Yeah, he ran for stuff. I don't know if he won, but yeah. He said that it was hockey is much like the litigation aspects of law. In both hockey and litigation, there are long periods of preparation followed by relatively brief presentations, and then the results are there graphically. The jury returns its verdict. The red light flashes behind you. The numbers go up on the scoreboard. The only difference is that you can't appeal the decision of a goal judge during a hockey game. I think you can now.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, they send it back to Toronto. Yeah.
But not only did he do a lot of winning, but he won a lot of cups back when Montreal was the team. You know, I think they won it in 71. This article's in 74. They had gone 3 years without winning a cup, which for them was like an incredibly long drought because they won it in 76, 77, 78, and 79, his final season playing hockey. And then
he just retired.
Just retired. He was still very good.
Yeah, still top of his game.
Well, the Canadians are probably the most famous team of the original six.
Yeah.
They're probably, they're probably the symbol of hockey in that initial stage. And, then as it expanded, the New York Islanders about to take over as the dominant team, and then the Edmonton Oilers. But, before that, it was the Canadians.
Yeah, and I think it sort of hurts the NHL nowadays that the Canadians just aren't that good. I think because they were such a hated team by a lot.
I mean, it's been, I don't know how long, but maybe like 30 years since any Canadian team has won the Stanley.
93.
Last one was
the Canadians beat the Kings in 93.
All right. So 31, we're going on 32 years this coming year.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's why so many people wanted. There was a lot of people, not Calgary and teams like that, but there were certain parts of Canada that wanted Edmonton to win last year against Florida, because it has been that long, which is sort of odd because Canadians and Edmonton went through their high end, and then Calgary was good for a time. It's weird with no Canadian teams.
Yeah, and they still think of it as their sport.
They do.
Rightly so, probably. So.
We always try to get the guy on the cover. That's the goal when we start an issue. And from there, we think about other potential guests that can be tied to the cover story. Montreal Canadiens goaltender Ken Dryden is the guy on the cover of the November 25th, 1974 issue of SI. And after his Hall of Fame career ended, he got into broadcasting. And without a doubt, his most famous game was on February 22nd, 1980, sitting alongside Al Michaels in Lake Placid, New York, the Miracle on Ice, the greatest sporting moment of the 20th century, when a group of amateur hockey players did the impossible by beating the Soviet Union hockey team in the Olympics 4-3. Captain of Team USA, who scored the winning goal against the USSR, Mike Eruzione. I was 11 years old when Mike's wrist shot shocked the world and gave the Americans the lead, a lead they never gave up, and I never forgot. And I'm guessing, Mike, you haven't forgotten about it either, have you?
No, not at all. It's a good part of your life that you can look back on and, realize that my teammates and I were able to be a part of something pretty special.
Did you have any idea, Mike, at the time, like almost immediately, how big that was going to be, not just for the team, but for you personally?
No, we had no idea. I had no idea. We were playing a game with the hope and dreams of winning a tournament. Everybody still talks about the Soviet game. But if we don't beat Finland, you and I aren't having this conversation today.
That's right.
So, I think I look back on it, and my teammates look back on it and realize it was something that was special. It was more than a hockey game. We found out later that it was something that brought a country close together at a time that we needed something to feel good about, almost like we're dealing with today,
right?
And to some degree, but we had no clue. It wasn't until the games were over, and we got out to the country and realized that this thing was far greater than an athletic event. And now even 45 years later, coming up in February, I still meet people, have letters I get in the mail that come up to me and they tell me a story. I laugh about it sometimes because they'll come up and I'll go, I remember where I was when we won. And I always go, I didn't know you were on the team. But that's what that moment was.
Yeah, we were all on the
what that
team. That's
moment
right.
was to a
Yeah.
lot of people for a lot of different reasons. For some people, it was a hockey game, but for more people around the country and around the world, it was far greater. And like I said, we take great pride in knowing that we were part of that.
Before we get to the end of the run, let's go to the beginning. And Coach Herb Brooks, who I read had a 300 questionnaire psychological test that every player had to take. What was that like? And do you remember a few of the questions that you were kind of like going, what the hell am I getting myself into here?
I wasn't very good when it came to testing. But, they were just bizarre questions. I would kill my mother to win. Sometimes, always, never. All these things that, to me, had nothing to do with playing on a hockey team. But, to this day, and I talk to my teammates, a lot of us don't remember the questions. We don't even know if Herb looked at all the answers, but we did say to each other, don't copy someone. Because if he's a serial killer, you're going to get the same answers as him, and you don't want that reputation. So it was more bizarre than anything else. Like I said, I don't know if it had anything to do with who was going to make the team and not make the team, but that was just kind of Herb. He always was thinking outside the box. So maybe that was some way for him to get to know some of the players that were trying out for the team that he didn't maybe know that well.
He had all sorts of sayings, many of them that made no sense. Can you give us some examples of the things that he would say that would leave you scratching your head going, what's the coach trying to say?
The one that always stands out for me was weave, but don't weave for the sake of weaving. And the weave was where we're going to crisscross and interrupt, it changed actually the way we played the game. It's a lot of the European style, which was a lot of weaving. You'd go, the center would go to the right would go to the left would go across. And, like I said, he just stood there and said, weave, but don't weave for the sake of weaving. And I'm like, where the hell's he going with this? And then one day in practice, he told Kenny Morrow that he was playing like he had a 10-pound fart on his head. And I remember hearing that and going, Kenny, yeah. And Kenny was skating around going, what does it look like? What does it look like?
It's not good.
And it smells.
Yeah, it was just some, just crazy things that he would come out and say.
Your relationship with, I was listening to something with Herb Brooks. He talked about when he was picking the players, and he specifically spoke about you. He goes, I didn't know the Eruzione. I saw him play. I liked what I saw. How was your relationship with him, and how did you prove to him how great and how needed you were on that team?
We had a great relationship, but Herb had a great relationship with all the players. But because being the captain, I probably spent a little more time talking to him. You got to remember, 9 of the guys on the team played under him at the University of Minnesota, so he knew those players. He knew their personalities. He knew, what motivated them and how to coach them and be around them. The rest of us were kind of, finding our way through Herb and getting to know what he was looking for in us, or looking for in us on the ice as well as off the ice. I was always confident in my abilities. I never worried about maybe being able to make the team because of my talent. I guess the thing I always worried about was, for years it was a Western coach, Western players, Eastern coach, Eastern players. And as you probably know, Boston University and the University of Minnesota didn't have a great relationship from our college games. So I was curious if I was going to be under, a certain critique from Herb because I was from the East and not one of, the Minnesota, or one of the Western players. But, up until the day Herb passed, we had a great relationship. We had tremendous respect for each other. I think Herb respected me. I think Herb trusted me. And I've said many times as a player, if you don't trust your coach and if you don't respect your coach, you're in trouble. And I think for me with Herb was making sure that he trusted me and he respected me as a player. And clearly he did. And, everything kind of took off from there. But, Herb was in many ways no different than Jack Parker, who was my coach at Boston University. Coaches in those years, they demanded a lot out of you. They challenged you every day. That's the way it was in the 70s and early 80s. Very different than coaching kids today. But I think Herb saw something in me as a player. I've been successful at every level of play that I played at, and just, again, trusted my abilities as a player and as a person that, could be on that team.
Were you surprised when you were named captain? How did that whole process work out?
Well, it was kind of funny because the players voted. And there's no way 12 guys from Minnesota voted for a guy from Boston. And 9 guys who played at the University of Minnesota. They had played under Billy Baker. Billy Baker was a captain at the University of Minnesota. And as Craig Patrick, our assistant coach, said, the players voted, but Herb counted the ballots. So I didn't think that much about it. And up until this day, I've said many times, I was a captain amongst captains. We had a team of leaders. You know, Mark Johnson and Bobby Suter were captains at Wisconsin. Jack O'Callahan was a 2-time captain at Boston University. Mark Johnson and Suter and Johnson were captains at Wisconsin. Schneider was a captain at the University of Minnesota. Davey Christian was a captain. Neil Broughton, captains of their high school teams. Harrington and Pavlich were captains at the University of Minnesota Duluth. So, you know, if you look in that locker room, I think everybody was a captain at some point. And the fact that I was a captain, you know, it was a great honor for me and a privilege, but it didn't change me as a person. You know, I don't think because you're the captain of a team, you should be somebody different. And I think maybe Herb saw in me that maybe I was one of the older players, but somebody that my teammates respected to be the captain of that team, knowing that it wasn't going to change me, who I was. You can't all of a sudden be the captain and go, oh, I'm the captain, you know, this is what we're going to do. It was important to stay who you are. And your teammates, I think, respected that in me.
You know, I went back and I watched a lot of at least the highlights of some of the Olympic Games. The first game you play against Sweden, you tie 2-2 with 27 seconds left. Bill Baker scores the goal. But then after that, you guys scored 23 goals over the next 4 games. How important was that Sweden game, and what did it do to propel your energy into the rest of the Olympics?
Yeah, I think Billy Baker's goal was arguably one of the biggest goals of the Olympics. We didn't play that well against Sweden. Pelle Lindbergh was the goaltender, and he played pretty well when chances we had. But I think that kind of gave us a look at saying, like, we got a point in a game that people didn't think we were going to even come close to. So I think the mindset of our team was pretty positive after that game, you know, saying that if we lost, who knows how we would have reacted. But I think the big thing was the next game was Czechoslovakia. And they were the only team that anybody thought could beat the Soviets, and we blew them out of the building. You know, we beat them 7-3. And, you know, one of the things was interesting, and this is funny, I didn't know this till about 2 years ago. Robbie McClanahan brought it up to me in a conversation. I've only seen the Soviet game twice. And Robbie said to me, in the third period of the Olympic Games, in the third period alone, we outscored our opponent 17-3. That's an incredible number. And I just think it showed the conditioning of our team, the speed of our team, obviously the youth of our team. You know, we were the youngest team in the tournament. Matter of fact, the Olympic team that I played on in 1980 would be the youngest team in college hockey today. So we were young, and the conditioning, all those skating drills, all the Herbies that we did, we wore teams down in the third period. Again, that's a tribute to my teammates and to Herb, you know, how he challenged us all year.
That leads me to this, Mike. In the movie The Miracle on Ice, there's the famous again scene, and that leads to your conditioning. That may have been maybe too much conditioning, but how accurate was that scene? And for our listeners, if you could let them know what that was all about.
Well, it was a scene that we played in Norway. Only 16 guys dressed that night. We usually there were 26 players of the team at that time. So a lot of times we would only dress 16 players, 3 lines, 4 defense, 5 defense, and whatever. And we played the game. Buzzy Schneider got thrown out of the game for fighting. So there were 15 of us left on the bench when the game ended. And we skated off the ice, or started to skate off the ice. And Herb was on there, and he blew the whistle, and we proceeded to do these drills. We called them Herbies because we loved them so much. And Herbie would be like a suicide or a gasser that you've done in football field. You know, I played football, and basketball players, you run the lines. And
right.
What a Herbie was, you'd start at the boards, you'd go to the blue line back to where you started, then the red line back to where you started, then the far blue line back to where you started, then you go down, touch the boards, and come back. And you did 5 or 6 of those, you were pretty tired. Well, we did them for about an hour and 15 minutes after the game. But we didn't do them everybody at once. We did them in waves of 5. So we'd go waves of 5 for about 15 minutes, then we stretch. And the other guys were in the stands and they wanted to get their equipment. They thought we were going to do like a practice after the game. And Herb said, you stay and watch. And then we did them 15 more minutes and we stretched, 15 and we stretched. Then they shut the lights off in the building and we continued to do them. And then we finally brought us in the locker room and he said, gentlemen, if you play this way again tomorrow, you're going to skate again. Well, we beat Norway 8-0 the next day. The lesson was learned. But I think that still became part of our conditioning during the season, part of our practices. We always ended it by doing some Herbies, but we never did as many as we did after that Norway game.
At what point did you think that you could beat the Soviets? Was it actually in the game itself? Was it the Czechoslovakia game before? Was it the
No, I think we thought we could beat the Soviets when the game ended.
That's right about when I thought it.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be a hard game, and we knew they were the best team in the world at that time. But obviously, our confidence level was pretty good. We were playing extremely well. The fact that the game was in Lake Placid was a huge benefit for us. But we come out in the first period and didn't really play that well. But Mark Johnson, who was without him, we don't win anyway, scored a huge goal with no time left on the clock. So in a period we didn't play well, we're tied at 2. Then we went out in the second period and took some penalties and still didn't play well. The Soviets really controlled it. Jimmy was playing great in goal, and we were trailing 3-2, but we weren't out of it. If we were 2 or 3 goals behind, then the game's over. We're not going to catch them. But here we are, still haven't played our best hockey, and we're only down a goal. And then Magic scored. Mark scored to make it 3-3, and then I scored with 10 minutes to give us the lead. And if you watch the movie Miracle, the last 10 minutes, it's like all the Soviets did was shoot the puck at the goal. You see, save. Mm-hmm. But when I saw the game, like I said, it was only a few years ago that I saw it. The Soviets only had, I think, 5 or maybe 6 shots on goal in the last 10 minutes. We totally controlled the third period, the last 10 minutes of the third period. And, basically won the game 4-3. And then still had arguably the biggest game for us ever to play was the game against Finland, because like I said, if we don't beat Finland, or if we even tie Finland, there's a chance we don't win a medal. So The Finland game was by far the biggest game of the tournament.
At what point did you hear about Miracle on Ice? Because obviously you're playing the game and you don't hear the call. At what point after the game did you hear, everyone's talking about this call that Al Michaels made?
I never heard it. Some of my teammates did, because after the game, because the game was tape delay, a lot of my teammates went back to the house where our parents were staying. We called it the hostage house. and they watched the game. They watched the game because it was on tape delay. So I didn't know about it, and actually didn't hear about it till well after the Olympics, when I got back to the States and got out into the country. So I knew nothing about Do You Believe in Miracles? And then found out later, and it's even funnier because obviously Al and I got to know each other very well over the years and have played some golf together in celebrity golf tournaments. And we're walking up the first fairway and we'll almost look at each other and go, okay, how long before somebody says, Do you believe in miracles? And it's no sooner that it comes out of our mouth and some guy in the fans are going to yell out, hey, Mike, Al, do you believe in miracles? And I look at Al and I said, if we ever win this tournament, that would be a miracle.
We're talking with Mike Eruzione, team captain of Team USA. Like he said, he was the captain of the captains from that gold medal winning team from 44 plus years ago. Mike, you just mentioned Al Michaels. I saw in an interview, Ken Dryden is the cover man of this week's Sports Illustrated. I saw in an interview where he said he and Al were very close to the Olympic team. Being the captain and, like you mentioned, one of the older guys, you were 25. Did you get to know Ken, and what was he like?
Well, I got to know Ken for a couple of ways. One, he was a Cornell grad, and I'm a Boston University grad. And in those years, Cornell and Boston University had some incredible rivalries and national championship back-to-backs, both teams. So I knew who Ken Dryden was as a goaltender for Cornell. Then I got to know him more, not knowing personally, but the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens, if you remember those years, were some unbelievable battles. And Ken came right out of college, and here he is standing on his head, 6'6" or whatever he was at the time, against the big bad Bruins. So I got to know a little bit about Ken Dryden then met Ken through obviously the Olympic Games and before the Olympics, when he kind of met the team. And he was just a great man. He is a great man. I got to know him very well. We worked together. I worked at the 84, 88 Olympic Games with Al and Ken. I got to spend a lot of time with them, and He's a very, very bright man. He's a very intelligent man. Very, when you listen to him talk, everything is very well thought. Ken just doesn't say something for the sake of saying it. There's always some meaning behind him. And as a color commentator, you get a lot of color commentators that are very emotional and very excited. Ken is very even keeled. Mm-hmm. And as a person, he's the same way. I don't know if you ever read Ken's book, which I did read, and I'm reading the book. And as I'm reading the book, I think I'm listening to Ken talk. It was just exactly his personality and the way he was. So tremendous respect for Ken, obviously as a goaltender, even though he went to Cornell. But as a broadcaster, listening to what he said and throughout the games, it was, again, very well thought. It wasn't just a reaction. It was something that he knew how to put into words what was going on the ice.
He was a Hall of Fame goaltender. His style of play and the style of play that goaltenders played back then might not work in today's game. Back then, he was a stand-up guy. He was all about the angles. Now they play more back in the net. But I always say this, Hall of Fame players, they adapt. He could play in today's game. He just would have to play differently.
Well, knowing Ken, he probably wouldn't have played differently. He still would have proved that this is how I play, and this is the way I'm going to play. At 6'5", and I might be off an inch or two here or there. There's not a lot of netting. And in today's game, you got to remember the equipment the goaltenders wear today is far greater and bigger than the equipment that Ken wore. So I can't even fathom how big he would be in the net with today's equipment. But he was clearly very successful at every level that he played. So it would have been interesting. Like I said, knowing Ken, he would have said, "To hell with you. This is how I'm going to play."
I love that. You mentioned that he wrote a book. It was about his final season with the Habs in 78-79, which ended with them beating the Rangers for the Cup, I think. He's kind of a different guy. He's an author, but then again, I'm talking to you, and you're an author. You wrote a book, The Making of a Miracle, published by Harper. How important was it for you, Mike, to document your life by writing a book?
Well, I didn't want to do it. Neil Bodette approached me and to me about the team writing a book. And I talked to the guys in the team, and they're like, we're not really interested in anything like that, which didn't surprise me because my teammates are as low key as you can imagine. So it wasn't a big deal about having a book written about us. So I said, no, we're not interested. And then he said, how about you? And I went, I don't know, you write a book, then you got to tell your story, and then you got to go around places and you got to do book signings and all that kind of stuff. I said, no, not really. And then I talked to my wife and I thought more about it. And I said, you know what? Yeah. I said, I want to write the book because I want and I say this in the book, I wrote it for one reason and one reason only. I want my grandkids to know that Papa's life wasn't, one game or one day or one moment. I wanted my grandkids and someday their kids to know about their family, about their great-grandfather, about their great-grandmother, about their grandmother and grandfather, about their cousins. I'm a very close-knit family guy. My family lives very close to me. My son lives directly behind me. My daughter lives down the street. My cousin lives around the corner. My sister lives in town. My other sister lives in town. My wife's one of 13 kids. So family is very important. And I thought it was important for my grandkids to know about the history of my family and who I am and who I was as a person, and not just something they read about in the paper about, a goal here or an assist there, or, even winning an Olympic gold medal. I think there's more in my life than 2 weeks in Lake Placid. And I thought it would be fun for them to get to know that.
Well, going back to that one amazing moment, not the Soviets, but the next game against Finland, you're down 2-1 going into the third period. What is it that Herb Brooks said to you? I remember it, and I just want to hear you tell me.
Well, this is how I remember it. My teammates, we always wonder whether it was after the second period or before the game. But I remember going in the locker room, and Jack O'Callahan, he must have said it 100 times. There's no way a bunch of effing Finns are going to beat us from a gold medal. And the energy in the room was incredible. I mean, we were jacked. The guys were excited because we didn't play that bad in the first two periods, and their goaltender was playing really well. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking we're going to run into a goalie that's going to have the game of his life. And, sometimes that happens in sports. And I remember Herb coming in And we sat down and he said, if you lose this game, you'll take it to your effing grave. Then he walked out, he stopped at the door and he pointed his finger back at us and he said, your effing grave. And he walked out. And we got out of our seats and out on the ice we went. And I've only seen the Finland game once, but I remember how we played in the third period. And in my opinion, it was the best 20 minutes of hockey we played all year against any team, anytime, was the last 20 minutes against Finland. And we dominated that period. We scored 3 goals. We went 4-2, and we win the whole thing.
For you guys to peak in the third period in the gold medal game, I mean, talk about something you can look back on with complete pride as a team, that all that work off the ice, the sacrifices that you guys made, that at the moment that it had to come together, you guys did.
Right. And I say that many times. I still speak at a lot of sales meetings, and I talk about a true test of your character and a true test of a team is how you respond when your backs are to the wall. You know, when you're winning, everybody's laughing and high-fiving and having fun. But when the real challenge is ahead of you, that's the true test of the heart and the pride and the commitment. And see, our team had many intangibles. We were clearly pretty good. You know, we didn't suck. We had some pretty good players, but we had a work ethic and we had a commitment. We had tremendous pride in ourselves and in each other. And I think when your backs are to the wall, those are the qualities that you have to have. A true test of a winning team and a true test of a winner is, like I said earlier, about how you respond when the challenger is in front of you. Some people fold and can't deal with it, but we approached it totally differently. Hey, let's go out and play the way we're capable of playing, and let's put this game to bed. And again, I think that just speaks volumes of my teammates and the commitment that they had for themselves and the commitment that we had for each other.
So you get that gold in 1980. 20 years prior, the U.S. won a gold in Squaw Valley. You had Dave Christian on your team. His father, Bill, played on that team in 1960. Did you ever get a chance to meet him, or did he tell his stories about what it was like to win back in 1960?
No, you know what? If you knew Billy Christian, he's a man of very few words, unlike his son. But no, you know, I got to meet Billy obviously through the Olympic year. We played up in Wall Road, Minnesota. I actually played against Billy. The 80 team played a game in Wall Road, Minnesota against the Wall Road, I think it was the Lakers. I think it was the team. And Davey's dad played, which was kind of cool. But no, we never asked him about it. He never really talked about it.
So everyone knows about the movie Miracle with Kurt Russell. But there was also another movie made about you guys. It was a year after the actual event in 1981. It was a TV movie, Miracle on Ice, that I think had Carl Malden playing Herb Brooks in the movie. Which was a better representation? Did you see both movies, or how did you rate them sort of in accuracy?
The second movie clearly was better. I mean, the first one was nice. It was right after the Olympic Games. And, you know, Carl Malden was great, but he wasn't Herb Brooks. And the difference, too, in the two movies was in the first movie, they had actors teaching to skate. Mm-hmm. In the second movie, the actors were all hockey players who had played at the college level or minor league level. So the hockey scenes in the second movie were direct, real. I mean, these guys could play. I was on the set watching some of the practices and the filming of it. So I think there was a big difference from the hockey scenes in the second movie. I mean, the first movie was, you know, really put together quickly. I mean, Frank von Zernak, who was the producer director, was a great man and a very nice guy, because I was actually on the set for that movie. But like somebody like Andrew Stevens, who played me, he couldn't even ice skate. And the kid who played me the second time, Patrick Dempsey, who was from Boston area, you know, played college hockey. So I think that was the difference between the two movies.
So did they just use a double every time Stevens had to be on the ice?
He wasn't on the ice that often in the movie.
That's tough to score a goal.
It is.
I haven't seen that movie in probably 40 years. So,
but you know, Mike, you're going to be shocked when I tell you this. They've never made a movie about my life. I'm stunned here. But what is it like when you see actors, whether it be Dempsey or Stevens, playing you? Yeah. Did they? What do you look at? Did they capture you? Did they do this right or wrong? What do you see?
I'm not that deep a person. It was nice to see somebody playing you. I remember when Patrick played me, I was helping out our high school team. And just before he started filming, he came to one of our high school practices and he was in the equipment. He was skating around the ice practicing with the high school kids. And everybody on the team, the high school team, wondering who's this kid out there? Who's this guy, skating? So practice was over, and all the kids were in a circle, and Patrick was there, and my two sons were on the team at the time. My son Michael, I think, might have been the captain of the team, and my son Paul was on the team as well. And I said, Michael, Paul, I want you to meet your father. And they kind of looked at me because he's going to play dad in the movie. So everybody kind of got a kick out of that. And it's actually funny. I was with Patrick about 3 weeks ago in Boise, Idaho, and got to see him. He's out in LA and he's doing really well in the film business. But it was, the first time I saw the movie, it was in the theater. They showed the movie to the team in LA before the premiere that night. And I think all of us were just watching the movie, wondering where they're going. What's the next scene going to be? And we didn't watch it like, you go to a movie to watch a movie. I think my teammates and I were more curious about what was going to happen and what they were going to show. And I remember Kenny Morrow, who was a great defenseman on our team, right? Kenny went from the Olympics to 4 Stanley Cups with the Islanders. And Kenny's not even mentioned in the movie. So we're in the theater, and halfway through the movie, Kenny stands up and goes, "Hey, was I even on this effing team?" and we just about lost it in the theater. So like I said, I'm not that deep when it comes to things like this. The only thing I would say is I think in the movie, Patrick was probably a little quieter than I am. There were some scenes where he kind of had a deer in the headlight look, like he was afraid of something, and that sure as hell wasn't my personality.
Right.
But they got the goal right, so
yes,
that was important.
They did, yes.
And they got the podium scene right, which was important to me. So, like I said, other than that, it's kind of fun to know that. And I guess, I don't know if my grandkids have seen the movie yet. Maybe they have, but I'd be curious what their take is on it when they watch it.
You mentioned earlier, Mike, that the game wasn't in Innsbruck. It wasn't in Sarajevo or Calgary. It was in the United States. It was in Lake Placid. How special was it that it happened there? And did it somehow, in your eyes, now you wouldn't know any different, but did it somehow make it different?
I think it was a huge part of our success was being in your own country for a few reasons. One, everybody speaking English. The food that you're going to eat, you're used to, you grew up, you didn't have to eat in another country. And I think the excitement in the streets, the excitement of the Olympic Games. I don't know if you've ever been to Lake Placid. I've been there many, many times. It's a quaint little village. It's a small little place. And you could see and get excited about the Olympics in general. Just every day you got up and walked the streets. Although once we started winning, we couldn't walk the streets because everybody knew who we were. Yeah. But the oval, a perfect example is the speed skating oval was right next to the rink. And I can remember going outside, standing on the fence, looking down at the oval and watching Eric Heiden win 5 gold medals. So I think the whole atmosphere, the Olympic Village, the excitement kept you pretty positive. Now, I don't know if we lost the first 3 games, who knows how it would have been. But because of the electricity in the whole facility in the town of Lake Placid, kept you pretty excited and pretty pumped up. And, the good thing was we weren't allowed to talk to the media. So we didn't know what was being written. We didn't know what was being said. I called my family at home, and I remember my sister, kind of screaming on the phone. And I went, "Look, you must be having a party. I'll call you back." And I hung up on her. I didn't know. I found out later that the TV stations were around my house constantly trying to interview my brother or my sisters, my cousins. I grew up in a 3-family house, and all my aunts and uncles and cousins were there, and the news the media couldn't get enough of what was happening at 2274 Bowden Street. And here I am in Lake Placid not knowing anything that's going on other than we got to practice, we got a game, we got to practice, we got a game. And like I told you, it wasn't until after the games that we got out into the country. When we landed in Washington, D.C., when the president sent the plane to take the Olympians to the White House, the streets were lined with 5, 6, 7 row deep, people waving a flag. And I'm like, wow, this was pretty big. So it was then that it kind of hit us as a team and hit me because, you know, my career, I retired, I stopped playing. I was now traveling around the country going, you know, doing the Tonight Show or Good Morning America. My teammates were playing, getting ready to play for the Rangers or the Penguins or Buffalo Sabres. And, you know, here's Mike playing in celebrity golf tournaments, you know, like a whirlwind tour of this whole moment. And, you know, thinking, well, this is kind of fun, and wondering how long it would last. And here we are 45 years later, still somewhat talking about it. And, you know, when I go to my grandkids' games, I have 7 grandkids, and 4 of them play, you know, are old enough to play. The oldest is 11, the youngest is 6 months. But they're playing hockey. And I go to their games, and all the kids that they play against see me, and it's like they've all seen the movie Miracle. They all know the story. So, you know, it's not on the tip of people's tongues, but it's talked about. And, you know, recently, and we don't know if this is ever going to happen, and this just came up in the media, and I don't know if it's going to be true or not, but there are some people in Congress that are trying to pass that the 80 Olympic team gets the Congressional Gold Medal. And that would be incredible. That would be the icing on a cake of a lot of a big cake.
Right.
But I think, you know, the moment was something that I think my teammates and I realized that touched the country at a time when we needed something to feel good about. And even though it's not, like I said, on the tip of people's tongues, but when people bring up sporting events, and you know, it's not like the, you know, Patriots winning a Super Bowl and we're excited in Boston, and people in Pittsburgh and everywhere else doesn't care.
Right.
You know, our World Series, the Yankees don't win. I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. You know,
Right.
I hate to see it, but I'm glad you know, the Dodgers won and not the Yankees, because I root for the Red Sox.
Yes.
But that's what the Olympic Games are. It's a nation that feels a part of it, and I think that's what separates our moment from other sporting events. And there are great Olympic events that we've seen over the years that we feel a part of, and we're proud to watch our athletes compete because they put a jersey on that says USA across the front. And I've said this, and I'll say this my whole life. My dad was a Marine. Other than representing your country in the military, or being a firefighter or a police officer, you know, or our first responders, people who are out there saving lives, there's no greater place to be than putting a jersey on that says USA across the front. And I will always believe that and stay with that.
But what was that emotion like when they put the medal over you? What was your emotion at that time?
It was just a very proud moment. It was just, you know, standing on the podium, see your flag being risen just a little higher, and everybody in the building singing the Star Spangled Banner. I mean, that was awesome. That was incredible. You don't see that enough. But to be a part of it with so many people and to share that victory, clearly, obviously, with my teammates and coaches, but to share it with a country, that doesn't happen that often.
How much did it mean to beat the Russians? Because that same year in 1980, the U.S. boycotts the Summer Games because of the invasion into Afghanistan. So you guys really had the only crack at the Russians. Right.
Well, you know, again, I'll say it was a hockey game. We were playing against one of the best teams in the world. You know, us winning didn't pull the Soviets out of Afghanistan. It didn't release the hostages. It just brought joy to a country, and eventually those things happened. But you know, it was a hockey game because, like I said, if we don't beat Finland, I don't think that Russian victory has the impact that it had. It might have had it for a little while, but it wouldn't have the legs that it's have now. To say, geez, if he only could have beat if he only could have beat Finland, you know, what a great Olympics. But geez, if he only could have beat Finland. So
right.
I always look at it that way.
How did you, before you played the Soviet Union, how did you guys prepare the night before?
Well, I've always approached my games the same way I did in high school or college. You know, you can't get too high because then you're going to run around and make mistakes, and you can't all of a sudden, you know, be different. You got to prepare the same way. So for me, I didn't want to hang in the Olympic Village, and my dad and my high school football coach and my cousin and some good friends were staying in a Winnebago about 6 miles outside of Lake Placid. So the night before the Soviet game, I thought it would be cool to go kind of have a few beers and hang with my dad and my cousin and my high school football coach. So state trooper, I asked him, I said, look, my parents are staying outside at this place. Can you drive me out there, for an hour or so and take me back? And the guy said, sure. So they drove me up, dropped me off at the Winnebago. I went inside. My dad had his little guitar and sat around and had a few beers and kind of relaxed. And trooper came and got me and went back to the village, got in bed and got up to play the game the next day.
Nice. No wonder you wrote a book.
That's right.
The how-tos of winning championships.
Well, like I said, you can't all of a sudden, change your
Right.
the way you've, I'd have sat in that Olympic Village in my room, just bouncing off the walls, wondering, let me go to bed. So I figured, let me be in an environment that I normally would have been if I was home playing, in the being part of NCAA championship game, being with my family and being with my friends.
Mike, 40, almost 45 years later. So, we're getting further and further away from 1980, obviously. Can you still see it in your head? Can you still hear it? Can you hear the fans? And is there a way that you can go back into it? I'm not saying watch it, but I mean like live it. Close your eyes and feel that. Does it still happen?
It's very easy. It's very easy to do that. And, like I said, I still do a lot of corporate speaking. So I deal with it way more than my teammates do. They've got their, they go to work and they have a job. My job is I work at Boston University. I'm around our hockey team constantly there. So I'm always reminded of the sport of hockey. I help out with our high school team. So I'm always reminded about the sport of hockey. So I deal with it in many ways. And then when I'm speaking at corporate meetings, I mean, I'll walk on and I'll get a standing ovation. And haven't heard me speak yet. But it's still, it's very much a part of my life. I've said many times, it hasn't changed me. I was very happy with who I was before the Olympics. I don't ever believe an athletic event should change who you are. It's clearly changed my life. I have a beautiful house where I live. I mean, financially, things have been great for me. I'm still, I'm married to my wife that I've been with for 50 years. So my life hasn't changed drastically. I'm still living in, like I said, in my hometown. My friends have been my friends forever, but clearly the opportunities I've been given because of 1980 has given me a little better, probably lifestyle, I guess you could say. I can afford to go places and do things. And, you're talking to somebody who grew up, with 4 sisters and a brother and a dad that worked 3 jobs, and a wife who's one of 13 kids who grew up with no money at all. So the financial benefits have been good, but, if we didn't win, I'd be coaching and teaching and living in my hometown, and maybe I'd have more than 3 kids. I'd have been home more.
Right.
So we do a segment here on the show. It's a trivia segment called 50-50. I'm going to give you a 50% chance of getting this question right. It's true or false, 50-50. So here's your question. The actor who played you in Miracle, Patrick O'Brien Dempsey, true or false, only lived 20 minutes away from you?
I'm going to say true, but it's probably 30 minutes away.
Then it's false. No,
That's right.
Patrick grew up in Danvers, Mass, which is, if there's no traffic, I think I could make it in 20 minutes.
You are correct, because you do know your Boston geography.
Yeah, just get Waze out.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank God for Waze.
Right. Mike, in a time where our country is so divided, where families, as you mentioned, split up over politics, where neighbors can't talk to each other because of whatever, I look back at that February day and I think, thank God for Mike Eruzione and the boys of Team USA, a moment that will never be tarnished, that will never be forgotten. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And like we always say, things are going to work out. We'll get back to where we should be. Our country's been around too long to deal with the negativism. We'll get on the right page.
From your lips to God's ears. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. You're the
All right,
best,
guys. Thank
man.
you very much. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate
you.
it. Appreciate it so
Bye.
much. Thank you.
Bye now.
For me, guys, it still brings me such great joy, not just for that moment of 44 years ago, but because when things like that happen in sports, when the impossible becomes possible,
Right.
it just gives you this feeling of like, okay, don't get so down, because things can change in an instant, and you wouldn't think you'd get that from, and I didn't grow up a hockey guy. I mean, you did, and you did a little bit. I didn't. No, not as much.
Really.
So like that for me was like, I didn't quite know the game. And,
but also in that, they were amateurs. They were young guys.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's the NHL guys in all the countries. These were amateurs, and there were guys. Pelle Lindbergh, you mentioned. Jari Kurri played with Finland. You had superstars in the future playing on these teams, and these are just college kids.
Right.
And they put it all together to beat a Russian team that had won after USA won in 60. Russia won all the way up. Every game Soviet Union won all the way up till 1980.
Right. And they played, we didn't mention it, but they played a bunch of exhibition games.
They did, lost 10-3 in the one.
And just were getting smoked.
Yes, and they played on a bigger ice because the Olympics were a bigger ice.
Right.
So USA had to adjust their whole game to a bigger ice surface.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
American hero.
Right?
Just not the hockey stuff. He talks about, he still lives in his hometown.
Right.
His whole family's there, same friends. A lot of people, when they get to his, stature, they're living in New York and Manhattan.
Right.
Their friends, oh yeah, I don't go back. They're different people.
Probably still has that same Winnebago.
I bet he does. Exactly. And I bet you I wouldn't be surprised if he goes up to that place spot with his parents sometimes.
When he
goes
goes back to Lake Placid.
and goes, let's go have a beer. Yeah. Let's go do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of those, I would have never guessed in a million years that we would sit down with Mike Eruzione.
No. Me neither.
That was a treat.
Because remember, we try for guests, and sometimes when I looked at his name, I thought,
right,
we're not getting him, and he was just nice.
He was fantastic. He was just so authentic too,
down to earth
to what he is.
I mean,
and so Boston.
He's so Boston.
Yeah,
right. But he talks about, he's like, I'm still friends with the guys I grew up with, and I'm like, well, I'll be your friend.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, all right. Let's move on.
Just a job of work for the Vikes. The Vikings were coming off a loss to the Packers that dropped them to 7-3 in the NFC Central. But even with the win, Green Bay's 5-5, tied with the Lions, 2 games back of the Vikings. Back then, to me, there were like 5 teams in the NFL: the Vikings, the Rams, the Cowboys, Steelers, Dolphins, all right, 6, and Raiders. Everyone else was and the Vikings, they won at least their division, it seemed like, every year in the 70s.
Yeah, when you had Tarkington and Chuck Foreman and guys like that.
Well, and then that defense, right? The
Purple
Beaters with Jim Marshall and Alan Page and Paul Krause in the secondary. So yeah, just a great team. They were basically the Buffalo Bills of the 70s. They got to the Super Bowl 4 times, lost 4, not in a row, but 4 times and lost each time.
Well, what's interesting about this is, so they lose to Green Bay, and then the following week they lose to the Rams. So now they're 7-4. So you figure this is a bad season, but they win their final 3 games of the regular season, and then they win both games in the playoffs. So they get to the Super Bowl to face the Steelers.
Yep.
And
I
lost
like
the
how in
Steelers,
this article
but
they called the Chiefs antique.
The
Chiefs are so good nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs, when I first started playing football, the Chiefs and Raiders, one of those 2 teams would win the AFL or in the AFC every year. It seemed like they were always playing for it. But yeah, they won the Super Bowl with Hank Stram mic'd up and stuff. And but remember, the Kansas City Chiefs started as the Dallas Texans.
That's right.
First football team, not the Cowboys.
Now, one of the things that also was a very strong portion of the Vikings team was their offensive line. They were making some changes on that, right, Billy?
Yeah, you could have said, they're moving our first ever guest on this show. They're moving Ed White to right guard for Frank Gallagher, whose career ended right after that.
Is that right?
So, hey, there's our Ed White guy,
Yeah,
good man.
Ed White played for 17 seasons in the NFL. I think when he retired,
didn't he go to all the Super Bowls?
Yeah.
Or the 4? Yeah.
And I think when he retired, he had played more games on the offensive line than any player in NFL history. I don't think he has that record anymore, but he was
He's up there.
He was a beast. All right, a country boy has them jumping. Next up, the U.S. Equestrian Championships, and Billy, not a whole lot here.
No, I just like they said a lot of people dressed as Marshall Faulk, and when I read it, I thought I love Marshall Faulk. It's not the Marshall Faulk that played with the Rams or the Colts or at San Diego State. He was a French military leader. So there you go. So if you want to fool your friends on Halloween, dress as Marshall Faulk, the French military leader. Oh yeah, you'll get him there.
I prefer the people that dressed as Kurt Warner.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's are two of those. Wasn't there a guy? Is it the Jets or the Patriots had a Kurt Warner?
Oh yeah, there was a running back out of Penn State.
Back, Penn State, Kurt Warner with a C. But it takes special nerve to horse jump. My daughter Caitlin did horse jumping and stuff, and it'd be small jumps, but that's you're on this animal, and then you're lifting up in the air, and it's.
Yep. Well, the one guy on the mark,
Christopher Reeve,
Murphy, he was a jumper in the Olympics.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, paralyzed Superman. That's how difficult it is.
Oh gosh, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I forgot. That's a poll. I forgot about Christopher Reeve in that. Yeah.
Wright was all wrong, right? This is an article written by Steve Wright, who played in the NFL from 1964 to 1972, winning 2 Super Bowls with the Packers, but he is writing about 2 tumultuous seasons with the Giants. He asked to be traded away from Vince Lombardi's Packers teams, which he admits was a big mistake. About a month later, listen to this, he was selling glue in Milwaukee when he got the call saying, it's time, you've been traded, you're heading to New York. Now, he says in Green Bay, under Lombardi, it was like family, not in New York, and it started with the owner. He was not a fan of Wellington Mara. He writes, I'm Wellington Mara of the New York Football Giants. My father was a bookie. That's how I got to be president of the team.
Oh, God.
Welcome to New York.
So, yeah, he's not a fan.
I'll give you some trivia. I'll give you some trivia on Steve Wright. You ready for this?
Yeah.
He was the model for the NFL Man of the Year in 1969, which then later became the Walter Payton Award. And if you look at the thing that's sculpted by Daniel Bennett Schwartz, the award still bears Wright's likeness to this day.
That's awesome.
Talk about leaving your mark, man.
Right? Yeah. He was no fan of running back Tucker Frederickson, the only player on the team. How's this for cohesiveness? Only player on the team that was allowed to fly first class to away games, while the rest of the team sat and coached. If you look up Tucker Frederickson, he looks like every bad kid in movies. He looks just like Greg Marmalade in Animal House. So,
had you ever heard of him before you read this article?
I have. I remember him with the Giants. Absolutely, I remember him.
What was his name again?
I'm old.
Tucker Frederickson. He was a really great college football player. I think he finished.
Oh, he does look like him, doesn't he?
Doesn't he look like Marmalade?
Yes.
I remember in the late 60s, early 70s, Fran Tarkenton on the Giants and Tucker Frederickson on the Giants.
No, I just said he couldn't do anything with the Giants. There was some girl he invited to a table. He got in trouble for that. So you can't talk to girls. You couldn't cuss. You couldn't have an opinion. And he said there was too many cliques on the team.
Yes.
Didn't he later become a famous comic? Oh, no, wait.
I know exactly. Yeah. I hope.
Yeah. He's the one who was famous for saying 90% of all car accidents happen within a mile of your home, so I moved.
That's great. And the deadpan way he did all his jokes.
He was great.
Where is he now? He's still alive.
He's still alive. Yeah. This Stephen Wright said that he lived on 84th Street and he was going to make a personal appearance with Ken Avery of the Bengals that Mark just spoke about. The guy said, I'll pick you up about 9:15. We were supposed to be there about 9:30. I went out to the street early just in case. 9:15 passed, then 9, 9:15, 9:30. I finally caught a cab and got there about 10 o'clock. He never did show up. I saw him 2 days later and he said, oh yeah, I decided not to go. Real good team camaraderie there. So
at least didn't pirouette on his head.
He said in week 7, he was suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. When he asked the coach what he did, the coach, Alex Webster, said he didn't want to talk about it. This was after he had been fined by the team $750 for getting permission to fly home while he was on the inactive list to go see his daughter. When he returned, they were like, "Where did you go? You're suspended and fined." So, it was crazy. Good. Sounds like a good book. Lots of good stories in there. Mark, we got to pay some bills. You got an ad for us?
Yes, I do. It's for Magnavox TV. And Magnavox, I don't think they're in business anymore. But, the color TV. And Hank Aaron is the big sponsor. And he's sitting there. He's got a turtleneck on in his living room. And he's smiling. And he's watching a football game. And the football game is clearly USC UCLA, because you can see the USC uniforms, though they probably blocked out the logo for copyright infringements, but you can't see a UCLA flag in the background. So they just took a still image from a UCLA USC football game and stuck it on the TV.
Now, Mark, can I ask you, didn't they do that in another movie we just talked about too? Wasn't it USC Stanford or something?
Yeah, right. The 2-minute warning. But again, you see, a lot of times you don't have the rights. You look at ads, a lot of ads in Sports Illustrated, and they'll have a football player. There's one with Pat Fisher of the Redskins, but there's no logo on the helmet. He's clearly in the uniform, but they black out or wipe out the logo because they didn't get permission, I guess, from the league.
Yeah. Yep. All right, we got a couple of articles here that we're going to go really deep on. There's an article on deer hunting.
Yeah, yes.
And okay, so that I hope you guys enjoyed that one. And next up, some ski lodges in the Alps. Okay, so we're moving right along. TV radio. Now this is more like it. Right out of the gate, the names are Bob Cousy, Bill Russell, Elgin Baylor, and Jerry West. So now you've got my attention. What was this all about?
Well, it was a show called The Way It Was. It was on for 4 years on PBS. Kurt Gowdy was the initial host, and basically they would get a topic or a game. Like if you go to YouTube, they have one where it's the Packers and Eagles met in 1960 in the NFL championship game. It was the Packers lost that one. It was the only one they lost in the 60s. But anyway, they have 3 members from one team, 3 members from the other team, and they reminisce about the game.
I mean, it's like.
Did you see these shows, Mark?
I remember seeing them, yes, because they were. You remember what was the other show, Sports Challenge or something, where they would have like the 1960 New York Yankees.
Oh yeah, I remember Mickey Mantle was on one of them.
Yeah, the 1971 Boston Bruins, and they would do trivia questions. So it's different, but again, as this is sort of competition. Now, this wasn't a competition show The Way It Was, but they did bring in all these guests, and evenly from the 2 teams involved in whatever story they were doing.
It was basically a show that looked back on sports from almost a historical perspective. That kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Oh my God, they're going to come after us.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So besides shows on those 4 Celtics Lakers stars who went up against each other so often, there was one on the Dodgers-Yankees World Series. In 1947, host Kurt Gowdy interviews Joe DiMaggio about that classic series. So, yeah, they were just looking back at sports from a historical perspective, and they thought there was an audience. They got 4 seasons out of it, and I bet you that they had real commercials from Magnavox.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they did. Was it paid for the,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if they get Henry Aaron, they're paying.
Yeah, yeah. Or Reggie Jackson.
Yep, that's right.
Oh, what a BYU-tiful morning. Little college football. We'll start with BYU, who was just starting to turn into a good, solid football program under Lavelle Edwards. I think we mentioned him a week or so ago. And this one, there was a guy by the name of Orrin Olsen. Who was that, Billy?
Merlin Olsen's brother. And the 3 guys actually played in the NFL at the same time.
Merlin and his other brother.
Phil.
What was his other brother's name? Is it Patrick?
Phil. Yeah.
Phil and
Merlin.
Merlin, better known to many as Jonathan Garvey. I bet you know who that is, right, Mark?
Jonathan Garvey? Steve Garvey's brother?
That's who Merlin Olsen played on Little House on the Prairie. Jonathan.
Oh God, I should have known that.
Man, you had me going. I didn't know where you were going with that. That's good.
Come on,
What was the
Mark.
guy's name in Little House?
Jonathan Garvey.
Oh,
How did you
man.
know that?
I didn't watch that show. There wasn't enough violence on that.
I
It was
watched Little House
Little House on the Prairie.
religiously.
I've never seen an episode.
Oh,
Oh,
you should
you
you
don't know what
should
you're
watch it
missing.
with Callie. It's a wonderful show for kids.
Yes, that's the problem. There was no violence, man. I need some violence.
Violence or nudity. You got to give me something.
Nope, there wasn't a lot of those. Elsewhere, Anthony Davis has a big game and a win over Cal. AD becomes the first player in Pac-8 history, Pac-8, think of that, to top 1,000 yards 3 straight years. His 2 touchdowns extended his league career scoring mark to 47. Maryland wins the ACC by beating Duke. I never watched Breaking Bad. I had no idea it was a show about football. Walter White scores 3 touchdowns for the Terps in the win. So who knew? I would have watched it if I had known.
Yeah. Then he gets into a totally different line of work.
Right. I had to pay the bills. Texas held on to beat TCU, Mark.
Oh, yeah. So TCU was a pretty bad football team in 1974. I mean, when I say bad, I mean bad. So they play Texas. They score 16 points in the game, okay? Why is this important? Because that's the most points they scored in any game that year. They finished 1-10. And so they're excited. Hey, we got 16 points. Way to go. Problem is they gave up 81 points to Texas. They lost that game 81-16.
Yeah, Texas coach Darrell Royal said it would have been more embarrassing for the opponents if he had his team start punting on first down. They said they were trying not to run up the score, but all they were basically doing was handing the ball off and running for touchdowns. Moving on. This Earl has no peers. Earl Anthony is the most famous bowler ever. I mean, he might be the only one I can name. Maybe Pete Weber. See another one?
Yeah, Pete Weber.
Yeah.
He loses in the finals in this issue to Johnny Petraglia, costing him the opportunity to become the first bowler to ever top 100 grand in a season. So he's probably the most famous bowler of all time. And yet, Billy, if he had had his way, he would not have been a professional bowler.
No, he was scouted by the Dodgers. Said he had a good fastball, fair curve, and a bad changeup. He was also gotten an offer from Baltimore Orioles to play and a chance to play in Class B ball. And he said, I really wanted to play baseball, but there just wasn't much money involved. And he had a family to so he went home and he worked at a wholesale grocery outfit.
Yep.
Well, you know what I love about Earl Anthony? The crew cut. 1974, still had a crew cut. That's awesome.
But did you read about how they described him? They said Earl Anthony looks and acts like a loser.
Yeah.
Compared to him, Whistler's mother was a swinger.
Yeah.
I mean, damn. Yeah. Thanks for nothing.
And yet at that grocery store is when he joined the bowling team, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Joined a bowling league and bowled he got so involved, he would bowl 300 games a week.
Yeah. He made quite a career for himself. He died in 2001. At the age of 63 years old from a fall down a flight of stairs. I didn't remember that, but it's hard to believe that he's been dead for 23 years. Who knew?
Wow.
Hey, our good friend Curry Kirkpatrick wrote an article about memorabilia, and this guy by the name of Joel Platt likes to collect sports memories, and he has millions of them. He's got 20,000 autographed pictures, 15,000 programs. Sounds like Mark's garage. Hundreds of pieces of sports equipment dating back to 1865. It's his idea to use his vast collection as a nucleus to start the Sports Immortals Museum. This would be a national shrine similar to the Citizen Savings Hall, but as Platt puts it, without the dull, musty atmosphere of most museums. And he did just that. His collection is now valued at over $150 million. And you can see it at his Sports Immortals Museum in Boca Raton, Florida. Who knew?
Wow.
Did you go over some of the stuff that he has, though?
Yeah.
I mean, he has Muhammad Ali's 1960 Olympic Games sweatshirt. He has He has wood chopped by Cy Young just hours before baseball's most prolific winner died of a heart attack. And he also had a picture of him chopping the wood.
Yeah, his stuff. So it's not like a baseball card. He has like these mementos and things that are just
these
incredible.
And he would go up to people's houses. Like he went to Babe Ruth's house, Miss Babe Ruth, and she ended up giving him a wooden ashtray he had carved to resemble the Babe.
Yeah, it took
him years. She also gave him a bat and a plaque.
He looked into Jim Thorpe's family and got like his aunt to give him all sorts of things, and he asked and asked, and she kept saying no. She kept saying no, and then one day, out of the blue, like 4 years later, a package arrived, and all this stuff that was Jim Thorpe she had just sent to him. So, actually, she said, "I'm confined to bed. Come and get Jim's things," and he did just that. So,
wow.
And he did it just because he loved it. He loved collecting things. So, yeah, if you're ever in Boca Raton, Florida, the Sports Immortals Museum. Sounds like something that would interest the three of us for sure.
And if you're ever in the Santa Monica area, you can come to my garage where I've got all these Sports Illustrated magazines, hard copies.
Mark, you've got an amazing collection of stuff.
I got a 1959 program from the World Series between the Dodgers and White Sox. I got some interesting.
You do, but it's all buried somewhere.
I didn't keep good care of these things, or else they'd be worth something.
Yeah.
But remember, when we were kids, it wasn't the thing you did.
Right.
It wasn't what you did. I used to put my baseball cards in the spokes of my bike.
Yeah, everyone did.
I didn't know that I needed to keep a Pete Rose
threw them away. Be like, I already got a Ricky Henderson card. I don't need this one.
Yeah. Exactly.
For the record, Mark, you're up first as we head down the stretch.
There's two stories. I'll do the Saints beating the Rams 20-7 behind 2 touchdown passes from Archie Manning. People forget that Peyton and Eli had a dad who was a really good football player. Just Archie played on really bad New Orleans Saints teams. So he never got the accolades that he should have. I mean, he got accolades, but God, if he was on a good team, what his career could have been. He was so mobile as a quarterback. He could avoid the sack. He was just a really fun player to watch.
Yep, he was. Now he has a grandson playing at Texas.
Yep.
Bill?
I got the World Series shares, 1974.
Yes.
$22,000.
All right.
2024, $250,000.
Wow. And think of that. That's the funny thing is the $22,000 to those guys, that made a huge impact.
It did.
And now these guys get $250,000. And you know what? They oftentimes they give it all to the clubbies.
Yes, they do.
Right. They don't even need the $250,000. Whereas, 50 years ago, that $22,000 meant they didn't have to work that off season.
That's right. God, it's just a different world, man.
It certainly is. Faces in the crowd. Mark, what do you got?
Willie Miller, who was a 27-year-old flanker at Colorado State, caught 41 passes, 901 yards, 9 touchdowns. Think about that, how old he was when he played there. But Willie Miller was not done. He ended up having an NFL career. He actually, the thing about Willie Miller so fascinating to me was that I think he began in the U.S. Army. I think he trained with Special Forces in the Vietnam War, where he was a staff sergeant, and he got the Silver Star. I think for retrieving a wounded platoon sergeant under heavy fire. And then he ended up, playing college ball at a later age. And then he got drafted by the Houston Oilers in the 12th round of the 75 draft. Never started for the Browns, missed the entire 77 season with a dislocated elbow, was cut by the Browns, and then he signed with the LA Rams. And he was a starter in 78 on the Rams, led the team in receptions with 50, 760 yards, 4 touchdowns. And he was on the roster for the 79 team that went to the Super Bowl. So perseverance.
I remember the name. Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up here with a 19th hole. Isn't it funny how some things work out, writes Glenn Sweeney of Huntington Beach, California. When Joe Frazier beat Ali in their first fight, your cover headline read, "End of the Ali legend." Well, now it looks as if that fight was only the beginning. And he was right about that. Ali just kept coming back. Every time people were ready to just end his career and say he's done now, he just got knocked out by X or Y. Well, he didn't get knocked out that often, but he just kept coming back, and that's why he was who he was.
Didn't Ali lose his title to Michael Spinks? It was
Yes, I was just about to say that. It was yeah.
Yep.
I was at a Dodger game that night. I remember everyone was following the fight at the Dodger game.
Leon Spinks.
Was it Leon?
Leon Spinks, because he was the one that had the no teeth.
Yep.
He only had the 2 teeth on the side.
Yeah, Michael was younger and lighter.
Tyson.
He didn't fight heavyweight until he somewhat kind of fought Tyson.
Yeah,
you got in the ring at least.
Yes,
he'd last longer than I would.
Yep. Hey guys, want to wish everyone out there a very happy Thanksgiving, a wonderful American tradition and holiday. We have so much to be grateful and thankful for. Of course, I'm thankful for my wife, my 2 daughters, family, and friends. I'm blessed with so many good friends, but I want to say that I'm thankful for this show, and not just for all the money that it brings in. The people we have been lucky enough to chat with this year: Bob Thomas, Larry Zonka, Larry Farmer, Curry Kirkpatrick, Bill Curry, John Kinsella, Jennifer Chandler, Henry Lawrence, Rocky Blyer. I could go on and on. They have renewed my faith in humanity. They don't know us, and yet they have been so gracious, so kind. I'm thankful to each and every one of them, because they could have easily said thanks, but no thanks. Instead, they said yes, and it's been truly amazing. So, you guys have anything to add?
Oh, I was going to say, I would, Scott, just saying what you're saying. The show, it's just the thing that we all came from different backgrounds, but the thought that I have been on and been able to talk to Mike Eruzione, Larry Zonka, Johnny Rutherford. I knew all these guys growing up. I knew them, by proxy, being at home and then being on TV. But to be talking to them and hear those experiences has just been so memorable. And obviously, I'm thankful for having my friendship with you guys, and then thankful for my little daughter and my family. Just, thankful for the things that we all are thankful for.
Yep.
Well, I'm thankful for, my wife, my daughter, good friends, you guys not included.
Obviously.
No, but this podcast has meant a lot to me, and it's been fun and it's been rewarding, and meeting the people and finding out stuff about them that you just never knew. Life and death experiences. It's bad.
Absolutely. And there's, I don't know about you guys, but there's still something thrilling about getting a voicemail from Rick Barry.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of surreal from where we came from. It is
so strange to get an email back from, these guys, Bill Curry or
yep.
all these people. So yeah, it's
well, you get on your phone and you see a missed call and it says Mike Eruzione.
Yeah.
And it's not a fake one. It's not like I put it on there,
right.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Getting actor Stephen Lang on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The thing, though, I'm most thankful for is nothing to do with this podcast. It's the fact that we're approaching now a little more than a month before the release of Nosferatu.
Exactly. Thankful for that.
That's good. I'm glad that we ended on a high note there.
Succumb to the darkness. Be released on Christmas Day. Come on.
Speaking of thanks, Billy, you just mentioned him. Special thanks to Mike Eruzione. What a great guest, and talking about one of the greatest times in American sports history. So for Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott. You've been listening to Past Our Prime. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.